Everyone in the room turned their heads when they heard a small voice behind the door. It was soft but clear, and it made the room go silent in 1 second. No one expected to see a little girl standing there. No one thought she had anything to say. And no one knew what she was about to do. She was only 10 years old. She looked like a normal kid, but she had a big secret. Her name was Lena. She lived with her father Mark in a small apartment in the city. Her mother had passed away when she was just a baby. Mark raised her on his own. He worked hard every day as a translator for a big company. He spoke many languages and helped the company talk to people from around the world. Sometimes he worked very late. And because he had no one to watch Lena, she would come with him to the office after school. Lena would sit in the waiting room or near the hallway with her backpack and books. She never complained. She never caused trouble. She just read quietly or listened to people around her. Everyone liked her. They thought she was sweet. But no one knew that Lena was listening very closely. She was not just reading storybooks. She was also reading language books. She was learning what her father was doing. Every night at home Mark would cook dinner and talk to Lena in different languages. He made it fun like a game. He would say a word in French and she would guess it in English. Then he would switch to Spanish or Arabic or Chinese. Lena loved these games. She thought they were magic. Little by little she began to learn. Not just a few words, but full sentences, full ideas. She started to understand how people think in other languages. It made her feel strong. It made her feel like she had a superpower. Mark had no idea how much she was learning. He thought it was just fun and play. He was tired most nights and just happy that Lena was safe and smiling. He did not know that Lena was studying in secret, watching language videos online, borrowing books from the library, writing notes in small notebooks and hiding them under her bed. She was not just learning. She was practicing. Every single day. At school Lena was quiet. She did not have many friends. Other kids thought she was strange because she read books all the time. Sometimes they laughed when she spoke with an accent. But Lena did not mind. She had her own world. Her world was full of words and sounds and voices from different places. She dreamed of going to other countries. She dreamed of helping people understand each other, just like her dad did, but in her own way. One day something happened that would change everything. It was a normal Tuesday. Mark picked her up from school and brought her to the office. She sat near the hallway with her book as always. But this time something felt different. The office was busy. People were walking fast. Phones were ringing. Voices were louder than usual. Mark was called into a very important meeting. The company was trying to sign a deal with some clients from overseas. The deal was big, very big. It was worth $50 million. If the meeting failed, the company would lose everything. Lena looked up from her book. She could hear the voices from the meeting room. She could understand parts of the conversation. She smiled to herself. They were speaking French and Arabic and Mandarin, all the languages she had been studying. She leaned forward and listened more closely. Suddenly she heard something strange. The voices started to sound confused. One of the translators made a mistake. Then another. The clients sounded upset. The room went quiet. Then loud again. Then too quiet. Lena stood up. She walked slowly toward the meeting room. Her heart was beating fast. She knew she should not go inside. She knew this was not a place for children. But something inside her said go. She reached the door and paused. She took a deep breath. Then she spoke. Everyone turned at once. They could not believe what they saw. A small girl with a calm voice, speaking clearly, in the same language the clients had just used. Mark stood frozen. The CEO raised an eyebrow. The room was silent again. But not for long, because the little girl with a big secret was just getting started. Everyone in the meeting room stared at Lena as if time had stopped. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the clients looked surprised. A 10-year-old girl had just spoken their language. And not just a word or two. She had used full sentences with perfect tone and clear meaning. It was quiet for a moment. Then someone in the back whispered, "Who is she?" Mark felt his heart jump. He had never heard Lena speak that language out loud. He had no idea she knew it. He looked at her. She looked back at him with calm eyes. She was nervous, but she was not afraid. The CEO of the company stood up slowly. He walked toward Lena and asked, "What did you just say?" Lena looked at the clients, then looked back at the CEO. She repeated her sentence. The clients smiled and nodded. One of them spoke quickly in their own language, and Lena answered again without missing a beat. The CEO blinked. He turned to Mark. "Is this your daughter?" Mark nodded. "She just said exactly what we needed them to hear. She told them we are still ready to listen. She told them we respect their time and culture. And she said it better than our entire team." The room filled with quiet energy. The clients started to smile again. One of them leaned forward and asked Lena another question. She answered in perfect French. Another spoke in Mandarin. She switched languages like it was nothing. It was like watching someone play music with their voice. The CEO looked at Mark again. "Can she really do this?" Mark still looked shocked. "Yes," he said. "But I did not know until now. I never knew she had learned so much." Lena stepped forward. She looked at the CEO. "If you want, I can help finish the meeting. I can try to make sure both sides understand each other." She said this with a soft voice but strong eyes. The CEO gave a small smile. He looked at the clients. They nodded. "Please go ahead," he said. "Let us see what happens." And so Lena sat down in the big meeting chair. Her feet did not touch the floor, but her words reached everyone in the room. The meeting began again. One by one each client spoke. Lena listened carefully. Then she translated every word clearly and kindly. She did not just speak the words. She shared the meaning. She shared the feeling. She made everyone feel like they were heard. The CEO watched in silence. He had never seen anything like this. The lead interpreter who had made the earlier mistake sat quietly in the corner. Not angry, not jealous, just amazed. Mark stood near the door. His heart was full. He remembered the nights they played language games. The nights she read books in bed. The way she always listened more than she talked. He thought he was just raising a smart kid. He did not know he was raising a miracle. As the meeting went on, the mood changed. The room felt lighter. People laughed. They leaned forward. They smiled. The CEO gave a small nod to one of his assistants. "This deal might still happen," he whispered. One of the clients turned to Lena and asked a question about the contract. It was full of difficult business words. Lena paused. She asked the CEO for a moment. Then she carefully translated both the question and the answer. Not just the words, but the reason behind them. The clients looked impressed. One of them clapped his hands softly. They had come ready to walk away. But now they were staying. Now they were listening. Because of a child. The meeting lasted 1 more hour. And during that time, no one asked where the real translator was. No one said anything about her age. All they saw was someone who made peace out of confusion. When the meeting finally ended, the CEO stood and shook hands with the clients. The lead client said something in his native language. Lena translated with a smile. He said, "Thank you for the chance to understand each other." He said, "This little girl has a very big gift." Everyone applauded. Lena looked down shyly. Then she looked up at her dad. He was smiling so wide. His eyes were full of tears, but he did not cry. Not in front of her. Not here. The CEO turned to Lena. "You just saved a deal worth $50 million, he said. And you did it without fear. Without notes. Without mistakes." Lena looked around. She did not know what to say. She only said, "I just wanted to help." And that was the moment the CEO knew. This little girl had not only saved the deal. She had changed the way everyone in that room would think from now on. The door opened and the world outside waited. But Lena's story was only beginning. The meeting room was still full of quiet energy. The clients had left with smiles on their faces. The deal was safe. The company was safe. And all because of one girl. One girl who no one expected. One girl who had a voice stronger than anyone in the room. The CEO looked at Lena again. He was still trying to understand what had just happened. He had been in hundreds of meetings. He had worked with the best people. But he had never seen anyone do what Lena did today. Lena sat quietly in the big leather chair. Her legs dangled above the floor. She looked small in size but not in presence. She was calm. She was focused. She was not scared. The CEO turned to Mark. He said, "You never told me your daughter could speak all these languages." Mark shook his head slowly. "I did not know. I knew she liked words. I knew she listened a lot. But I had no idea she could do this." The CEO raised his eyebrows. "Well, she just did something none of our full team could do. She just fixed a $50 million mistake. She just saved us from disaster." Mark looked at Lena. His heart felt full but also heavy. "How did I miss this?" he thought. "How did I not see that my daughter had this gift?" Lena looked at her dad and smiled. "I only wanted to help," she said. "I heard them speaking and I understood. I thought maybe I could say something. So I did." The CEO walked closer to her. He sat in the chair next to hers. He said, "You know, some people go to school for 10 years and still cannot do what you did today. Where did you learn this?" "How?" Lena looked down at her hands. Then she looked up again. "I read books. I watched videos. I listened to you when you worked. I wrote notes at night. I practiced by myself. Everyone thought I was just reading stories. But I was learning everything I could." The CEO sat back. He was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke again. "You are something special, Lena. You have a gift. And today you used that gift not to show off, but to help people understand each other. That takes more than talent. That takes heart." Lena smiled again. But she was still a little shy. She never liked being the center of attention. She only wanted to be useful. Outside the meeting room, people were talking. Word had already spread. Staff members were whispering. The girl who saved the deal. The girl who spoke 7 languages. Some people were trying to peek inside. Others were calling family to tell them what had just happened. Inside the room, Lena stood up. She walked to her dad and gave him a hug. "You taught me everything," she whispered. Mark hugged her tight. But he had no words. Just feeling. The CEO cleared his throat. He looked at his team. "Get the press team ready," he said. "This story is going to be heard. And someone get her a glass of juice. Or maybe a trophy." Everyone laughed gently. But the truth was, this moment was not funny. It was powerful. A child had just changed the course of a company. Lena picked up her backpack. She was ready to go home. It had been a long day. She just wanted to eat dinner and maybe watch a cartoon. But the CEO had one more thing to say. "Lena, would you be willing to come back tomorrow? Not for work. Not for translating. But to meet some people who want to thank you." Lena nodded. "Okay," she said. "If my dad says it is all right." Mark nodded. "We will be here." As they walked out of the room, people stood and clapped. Not because they were told to, but because they felt something. They had seen something rare, something honest, something brilliant, and it came from the smallest person in the building. That night at home, Lena sat at the kitchen table. She had her notebook open. She was already writing new words, new phrases, new questions in new languages. Mark watched her from the doorway. He felt proud. He felt lucky. But most of all, he felt amazed. He thought he had been the teacher. But now he knew. He had raised one. And her voice, her calm, clear voice, was going to be heard far beyond that meeting room. Because this was just the beginning of something much bigger. The next morning the sky was bright and clear. Lena woke up early even before her alarm went off. She was not nervous. She was calm. She had no idea what the day would bring. But she was ready to find out. Mark made her breakfast like he always did. Eggs and toast with a little honey. He tried to act normal, but he kept looking at her like he was seeing her for the first time. She noticed and gave him a small smile. "Dad," she said, "I am still me." Mark smiled back. "Yes, you are," he said. "But now everyone else knows what I always felt." They walked to the office just like any other day. But something was different. People were already waiting. There were cameras outside. There were people with microphones. There were workers standing at the windows pointing and smiling. Lena held her dad's hand tighter. "What is all this?" she asked. Mark said, "I think they want to meet the girl who saved the company." When they walked through the door, everyone clapped again. People from every floor had come down to the lobby. The CEO was waiting at the center. He stepped forward and bent down to look at Lena. "Good morning," he said. "Welcome back. Are you ready to see what happens when someone like you makes a difference?" Lena nodded. She was still a little shy, but she was not afraid. The CEO led her and Mark to a room upstairs. It was not a meeting room this time. It was a large open space filled with chairs and cameras and lights. Some important people were sitting in the front row. Reporters, company partners, even a person from the mayor's office. Lena sat in the chair they gave her. It was still too big for her, but she sat straight. She looked calm. She looked focused. She looked like someone twice her age. The CEO stepped onto a small stage. He spoke into the microphone. "Yesterday something happened that no one could have planned," he said. "Our company faced a big problem. A language barrier that almost cost us everything. But just when it looked like the deal was falling apart, someone stood up and fixed it. Not with force, not with fear, but with kindness, with patience, and with understanding." He turned to Lena and smiled. "And that someone is 10 years old." People clapped again. Lena looked down for a second, then raised her head. She was starting to understand something. It was not just about languages. It was about people. How people feel when they are seen and heard. One of the clients from yesterday's meeting stood up. He had come back just to thank her. He said, "I travel the world for business, but I have never seen someone so young make such a strong impact. You reminded all of us that words are more than tools. They are bridges, and you built one when no one else could." Lena stood up slowly. She walked to the microphone. She looked at the crowd. Then she looked at her dad. Then she spoke. "I never thought I would be in a place like this," she said. "I never planned to be part of a big meeting. I just wanted to help. I like learning. I like listening. And I believe that when people understand each other, they stop being afraid. They stop fighting. They start working together. That is why I learn languages. Because I want to be a bridge. Like my dad." The room went silent for a moment. Not because they were bored, but because they were moved. Then came more applause. Louder this time. Longer. Some people even wiped tears from their eyes. After the event, the CEO told Mark something quietly. "We want to offer your daughter a full scholarship. Any school she chooses. Anywhere in the world. We will pay for everything." Mark was speechless. He held Lena close and whispered in her ear, "Do you hear that? Your future is wide open." Lena just nodded. She did not want to think too far ahead. She was still just a girl. But a girl with a gift. And now the world knew. That night at home, Lena opened her notebook again. She wrote down new words. She drew a small bridge between two flags. Then she closed the book and smiled. The meeting was over. The deal was saved. But something much bigger had just begun. Lena's voice had reached a room full of leaders. But soon it would reach the world. By the next morning, Lena's name was everywhere. On phones. On news websites. On television screens. Even on the front page of the city's biggest newspaper. The headline said, "10-year-old girl saves $1 million deal with 7 languages." Mark saw it when he went to buy milk. He almost dropped the bottle when he read the paper. He looked at the picture. It was Lena sitting at the meeting table. Calm, focused, strong. He bought 5 copies and smiled all the way home. Lena had just woken up when he got back. He placed the paper in front of her. She stared at it for a moment, then looked at her dad. "I do not know how to feel," she said. Mark smiled. "You do not have to feel anything right now. You just have to be proud of who you are." That morning the phone rang over and over again. Reporters, producers, schools, even a university professor who had studied language for 30 years. They all wanted to talk to the girl who saved the deal. The CEO called too. He said, "We have to be careful. This story is powerful. and we want to protect Lena's peace. But she has inspired people, and the world wants to know her. They set up a short interview on a safe channel. Lena sat on a small couch beside her dad. The lights were bright, but she was not afraid. The reporter smiled and asked, "Lena, how did you learn to speak so many languages?" Lena thought for a second. "I listened, I watched, I practiced, and I loved every part of it." The reporter leaned in. "What would you say to kids who feel different or quiet like you?" Lena looked at the camera. "I would say, being quiet is not bad. It means you are listening, and sometimes people who listen can hear what others miss." After the interview, more people started sending messages, letters from parents, videos from kids trying to say hello in new languages. Even a school in another country sent a gift box with books and cards. Mark and Lena sat on the floor one evening, surrounded by papers and packages. It all felt like a dream, but it was real. One letter stood out. It came from a girl in another country. She wrote, "I saw you on the news. I want to be like you. I am learning 2 languages and I thought I was weird. But now I feel brave." Lena read it twice, then 3 times. Then she smiled and said, "If I helped one person feel brave, then I did something good." More offers came. One company wanted to make a short film about her. Another wanted her to join a global kids panel on culture and peace. A famous school offered a spot in their gifted program. Mark was careful. He said no to most things. He only said yes when Lena felt good about it. Through it all, Lena stayed the same. She still read before bed. She still played word games with her dad. She still walked to the store in her hoodie and sneakers. But something had changed. Not outside. Inside. Lena felt stronger. She no longer thought of her love for languages as a secret. Now she knew it was a light. And lights are meant to be shared. One morning as she walked to school, a little boy pointed at her and said, "That is the girl who helped the grown-ups talk." Lena just smiled and kept walking. At school, her classmates looked at her with new eyes. Some were still unsure, but others came to her with questions. "How do you say hello in Japanese? Can you teach me a word in Spanish? What does kindness mean in French?" And Lena taught them, one by one, with patience and joy. The principal asked her to help start a language club. Lena agreed. She called it the Bridge Club, because bridges connect people. Each week students came to learn simple phrases in new languages. They played games. They laughed. They listened. And every time Lena saw someone smile after saying their first new word, she felt that same spark, that same joy, the same feeling she had in that boardroom. The world had found out about Lena, but more important, Lena had found out about herself. She was not just the girl who saved a deal. She was the girl who helped people understand each other. And that was more valuable than any money. As the sun set that evening, Lena looked out the window with her notebook in her lap. She wrote a word at the top of the page. Hope. Then she wrote it again, in 7 different languages. And she knew this was only the beginning. The house was quiet as the sun came up. Mark sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea in his hand. Lena was still asleep. Her small notebook was open on the table next to him. It was filled with words in many languages. Some were written carefully. Others were doodled in the corners. Each word was like a little light. Each page told a story. And all of it came from her. Mark closed the notebook gently. He looked around the room. It was the same small apartment. Same old couch. Same creaky floor. But everything felt different now. Not because the place had changed, but because his daughter had. She was still his little girl. But she was more than that now. She was a helper, a guide, a bridge between people. When Lena woke up, she found her dad still sitting at the table. She rubbed her eyes and walked over quietly. "Good morning," she said. Mark smiled and pulled out the chair next to him. "Good morning, superstar," he said. She giggled. "I am not a superstar. I just used what I knew. That is all." But Mark looked at her and said, "You used it with courage. You used it with heart. And that is what makes it special." Later that day they went for a walk in the park. The air was warm. The trees danced in the wind. Children were playing. People smiled when they saw Lena. Some waved. Others just looked with quiet respect. They sat on a bench near the small lake. Mark looked at the water, then at Lena. "Do you remember when you were little and you used to ask what I do at work? You always said, 'Do you just talk all day?'" Lena laughed and nodded. "Yes. I used to think your job was boring." Mark smiled. "Now you do my job better than I ever did. You made people feel heard. That is the most powerful thing anyone can do." Lena leaned her head on his shoulder. "You always believed in me," she said. "Even when I did not say much. Even when I was just reading quietly in the corner." "That was never just reading," he said. "You were building something. And now I see what it was." That evening they got a letter in the mail. It had no return address. Just a stamp from another country. Inside was a photo of a small classroom. Children were holding up signs that said "Thank you, Lena" in different languages. On the back was a note. "Because of you, we started a language corner at our school. Now we share words from every culture in our village. Thank you for showing us how." Lena held the picture with both hands. She said nothing, but her eyes said everything. The next week the school invited Mark and Lena to speak at a special event. Parents and students gathered in the hall. The principal introduced them and said, "This is not just about language. This is about love, about understanding, about seeing each other fully." Mark stepped up first. He said, "I am just a dad who made many mistakes, a dad who tried his best. And somehow, I was lucky enough to raise someone who teaches me every day." Then he stepped aside, and Lena stood in front of the crowd. She looked at the faces around her. Some were young, some were old, but all were listening. She spoke gently, in English. Then she repeated the same message in 3 other languages. She said, "Kindness is a language everyone understands. You do not need to speak perfectly. You just need to care. When you care, people feel it. And that is when the world becomes a little softer." The room was silent at first, then filled with clapping. Not just polite clapping, real clapping, the kind that comes from the heart. That night as they walked home, Lena asked, "Do you think I will always love languages?" Mark smiled. "I think you will always love people. And language is how you reach them." Lena looked up at the stars. Then she said, "I think I want to learn more. Not just words, but how people feel, how they think, what they hope for." Mark nodded. "That is the best kind of learning." When they got home, Lena opened her notebook. She wrote down a new word, gratitude. Then she wrote it again, in every language she knew. She closed the notebook and looked at her dad. "Thank you for always listening to me, even when I had no words." Mark reached out and held her hand. "You always had words," he said. "They were just waiting for the right moment to shine. And now, they are shining everywhere."